Hi, and welcome to the show Podium. We're on session 060, and I'm delighted that this week's show is going to be a longer version than the normal podcasts, because a few weeks ago we had a webinar called Freeing the Athlete's Mind, the Route to Enhanced Performance. And I had a very special guest, Andy Winter. And I just want to introduce him to you now, but we had a most amazing conversation, and I want to keep it pretty much in its entirety for you, because I believe that the space that we created, and that goes for everyone on the call, was quite special. So Andy Winter has been an educator, administrator and coach for over 30 years. He encountered Declan Bettinger and Sydney Banks 25 years ago, and his life and his work changed dramatically. Since then, he has worked with adults, children, couples, schools, athletes, and teams in an effort to help them better understand their innate health, wisdom, and to live, work, and play with greater joy. Andy is the director of the Centre for Insight and Change in Brattleboro, Vermont, where he works sharing the principles behind the human experience. He also continues his practice as a tennis professional. So let's just join the conversation.
I was at a conference, the Viva conference in Spain last year, and met Denise. We had breakfast together a few times, and I knew what the work she was doing with athletes, but she didn't know about my background. It just didn't come up in our conversation. And since then we've connected delightfully around this topic, around how to help coaches and athletes, perform at their highest level, and how that really works, how the system behind that works. And so our conversations have been really exciting, and I've enjoyed them so much. So really any chance I get to have a chat with Denise, I will take. And I think we're going to be doing quite a bit more of this in various forms.
I'll go next, Denise. I know you can't see me, but you can hear me. This is Barbara Jorden. Well, I guess Andy told you that he first learned about the principles in my class. I used to teach at the University of Vermont, and I was competing in the senior games in track and field. And my first event, the first time I was 57 at the time, I was doing the high jump, and it got down to two people left. Myself and another woman from China. And he missed 3 times. I missed twice. I had one more jump left. And I don't know what happened, but I was in the zone. And I didn't remember anything until I got into the pit. And I looked up and the bar was still there. I had made the high jump and won my first gold medal in the senior games. And so looking behind that, I'm trying to figure out, how do you do that? And how do you help people? So I involved with the Vermont Senior Games. And we have a newsletter, and I write a column on being in the zone. And I've asked people to give me some input so I could see how this works. So when I saw that Andy and you were doing this in the zone part, I thought, I got to hear this. And how do you can't get there by thinking. We know you got to just drop everything and it happens. And so I'm really interested in how you would help people get this spiritual nature that is behind everything into achieving athletic performance.
Beautiful.
I'm 82 now and I'm still competing.
That's fantastic. Amazing. I'm so happy that you're on the call. I suppose the question that's coming up to me, first of all, is how can we get athletes to explore what's possible for them in sport through their human bodies?
Yeah, I was just so touched and inspired by different things that people said. And, the 3 things that just really struck me, the 3 words that I feel like kind of came together as I was listening to people were, confidence, the zone, and performance. Like those 3 things, like everything seemed to kind of be somewhat like enveloped by those or inclusive of those 3 things. And as I think about it, what I've seen over time is that human beings, athletes, non-athletes, human beings are hardwired to perform in the way that we're talking about, to perform, like to do whatever it is we're doing at a higher level even than our training would suppose we can do. Like it's in our very it's in our very nature to be able to do that because it's not my training that's doing it. It's not my personal experience that's the doing. And so as I think about this, I mean, there's sort of two directions to go. One is, to me, when we're doing anything and we lose ourselves to it, like Barb described happening on that high jump. When we're in the act of doing something, it could be art, it could be sports. In this case, it could be talking to our partner. It doesn't, our child, whatever it is. But when we're in the act of doing something and nothing else exists but that moment, which is all that exists anyway, but in our minds, when our minds are free of everything else and we're just in that act, we have access to, well, we always have access. We're experiencing a different level of, a different capacity is coming to life before our eyes. Now, it's always available to us all the time, but in those moments, the noise quiets down enough that we can usually see it, or at least see the results of it. And that's, when I think about confidence, I don't really think about like people feeling like, oh, I'm going to do well today, or wow, I'm so good, or gee, look at this, I've got all these skills. Like to me, that's sort of like superficial confidence. That's an external view of confidence. Confidence to me is knowing that that when an athlete knows, no matter what they're about to do, that it's going to be okay. Like that the outcome isn't really, there's nothing on the outcome of the event. That the actual event itself, the act of doing, is sort of all that they're interested in that moment. Like that's when we see someone, they look completely confident because they're not thinking about themselves. Confidence has something to do with us. This thing we're talking about, sort of has nothing to do with me as the athlete. It's what happens the moment my personal thinking sort of falls away. My personal thinking about like the outcome, about the past, about the score, about anything like that. And the funny thing is, as a coach, Katrina, I love that, is there's nothing we can do to teach people to do that because it's what we do already, right? The moment we are interested in whatever it is we're doing, like completely interested. That's why little kids are so good at this when they're just playing, because they lose everything else and they just play, right? So all of this intelligence that's more than just their personal intelligence, all of this creative wisdom that's flowing through us at all times, the wisdom of life that's flowing through them at all times and us at all times, it's just available to them in that moment because that's all they're doing. And they're having a blast at whatever it is they're doing, and their learning curve stays really steep. Now, when we play like that as athletes, when we perform without the idea that it's for something external, I mean, performance by its very nature, we make it in my head, it kind of creates this like people watching a scale of how I'm performing. But when all that disappears and we allow ourselves to just participate in the act of whatever it is, for the joy of participating in the act of whatever it is, we have access to, we do perform at high level. Sort of that's kind of the thing that's on my mind at the moment. And it's interesting, I just had a conversation with my daughter. My daughter is she's 14, and she's an nationally ranked tennis player in the States here. And she was talking about this yesterday. One of the announcers, we were watching a grass court tournament that's happening, and we just finished watching, the French Open and Roland Garros, and one of the announcers was talking about, well, if this player, breaks serve and then holds serve and breaks again, they're back in the match. And Emmy looked at me and she said, Dad, I started winning. I started playing better and winning when I stopped thinking about the score. She said, I remember the day it happened. She said, I just became disinterested in what the score was and whether I had to break serve or not break serve or how many games I was behind or how many, like she said, when I just became disinterested in the score, there was nothing else to do but like show up for the next one. Right? And to me, that's a description of what happens naturally for all of us when we just know that all we experience moment to moment is whatever is in our head. Like that's where our entire experience comes from. It doesn't come from the playing field. It doesn't come from the past. It doesn't come from the future. The only thing we experience is that which is in our heads in this moment. And now this moment. And it's always fresh and it's always new, even though we try to hang on to certain thoughts over a period of time. So for me, it just really strikes me that behind that thinking, that personal thinking, is this, some people call it flow, we can call it the zone. It is this innate capacity we all have all the time just to show up.
That's really lovely. And I guess I just sort of add to that. I mean, the word love for me comes up, and we can really see that when kids are engaged in something, there is this in the moment, in love with whatever they're doing. And it's unconditional. It doesn't have to be a particular way. There are no expectations of the outcome. It is impersonal. And when they're in that moment, and it's not about them. It's not about what people will think about them, and it's not about particular trophies or results. That when kids play, that's, for me, I see the purest sense of performance. and for me, the only way in which we can show up to perform, because we know that we have this, like you was alluding to, this infinite capacity to produce performance. And it doesn't have to look a particular way. And as soon as, even when kids start to want it to look a particular way, like they want to win, or and of course, we want to go out there and win. But when the win in their minds, because we're only ever feeling our thinking in the moment, we're not feeling the win, we're not feeling the circumstance. When that win in their minds, there's something about them as a human being, their well-being is now attached. It's now contingent. And that's the misunderstanding. And when, Andy, you alluded to, when things just fall off your mind, it's not a state that we can make ourselves get into, but through insight about how experience is working, i.e. we're projecting our experience into the world, and also who and what we really are, this incredible capacity, this wisdom, this resilience to produce in the moment movement and life.
we just naturally fall out of our personal thinking, because it wouldn't make sense for us to be all caught up and self-absorbed if we're creating it ourselves. And then we're free. We're really free to just get on and see what's possible, explore what's possible with these sports that we're all individually inspired. And when I break inspiration down, I see in spirit. We don't know why we're all inspired to do different things. Like, it's a mystery, and it's beautiful, and it comes through our physical bodies. And when we are living in harmony with that, and we don't think it's about us achieving, or that the outcome says anything about us as a human being, our well-being is always intact, and it's never contingent on results. It's never contingent on what it looks like. Then we are free to develop. We're free to explore. We're free to have every part of that experience, whether it feels yuck or whether it feels elation. We're free to have the whole thing. And you know what? We're okay. And that for me is just, as a national coach, if I'd have known this, it was the one thing that was just, we couldn't do enough in terms of controlling and manipulating and changing the athlete's thought processes. Like, we didn't have enough tools in the toolkit to be able to do that. And now I know why. Because it's impossible. And it's trying to get rid of the human experience as if that's the thing, as if that's the thing that's going to allow you to produce your best performance. And that's not true. It's just not true. And it's a bit like, it's a bit like sorting out your nightmares in the morning. But you're going after something that doesn't actually even exist. And you're trying to sort it out with a mental skill to calm your mind. Well, you know what? You're making it up, because we live inside this incredible capacity to project reality out into the world, given to us by this incredible power of thought. And when we see that and we see how it's working, we just we seem to just, through insight, naturally fall out of our thinking. It's like we arrive somewhere and in a slightly evolved state that it no longer makes any sense at all to beat yourself up when you can't do a particular thing, or you've just lost, or even when you've won, fine, you have the elation, but it's temporary. There's this love of competing, this love of the game that you're in, that you just relish every single part of it. You're not afraid anymore of it. You don't have fearful thinking around outcome. Like that just vanishes. And if people have a sense of that, then they're really going to be up for it. They're really going to be engaged. They're going to be as free, it seems, to stay in the moment, see what's possible. And I love what you said to me one time, Andy, about Emmy being 100% committed to the moment she's in. And that's obviously what I heard, and I don't know that you said committed, but that for me is a completely another realm. It's another dimension of coaching, because it brings you as the coach and the athlete together as one. Like you're just seeing what's possible. and you're not going in the past and you're not going in the future. You're staying in that moment and seeing what's possible. And collectively, when athletes do that, you know, and I've often talked and I've written about the All Blacks, and, you know, I've had a few articles now printed up from Leaders took an article when I saw that superior use, if you like, of the mind from the All Blacks rugby team. And it was as if they were really not interested in what they personally had to think about the game. And they were able to just fall out of that and fall in love with the moment that they're playing and whatever it brings. And you can see sports people, can't you? And Andy, I'd love you to share some of your stories about you know, sports people, when you can see them just touching that sweet spot of total engagement, pure download of this creative potential that we already are. Like, and there's just one other thing that's coming to me as a coach. I always thought that the zone was kind of a state where we needed to learn something to get to it. And then when I came across this deeper understanding of how life works, it was like, oh no, that's what we already are. We're already this incredible design and intelligence to produce movement, to produce performance. And without anything going on here, we are already that. So there's nowhere to get to. There's nothing that we need to learn conceptually to be able to fall back into what it is we already are. It's through insight and through deep realization that we start to connect with, well, what is it and who is it performing? And I really loved that when I looked at the intricacies of, well, where are the skills when I'm not using them? Like, where are my performances when I'm not? Where are they stored? Like, you can just start asking those questions and you can see that there's this greater unfolding, this greater power that we all are, it's the same for all of us. And I love it when teams, all individuals in teams, just collectively fall into that. And then anything is possible. Yeah. Thank you. That's all I've got.
That was really beautiful. I really love hearing that. Let me just add something to that, and then maybe we can ask what people are hearing. But that was really lovely. So as an athlete, I was a tennis player. I still am, but I was a competitive tennis player and played at a fairly high level. And I had that experience frequently. I mean, tennis sort of was that for me. It was the place where, like, I would walk on a tennis court and just expect life to show up and my mind to quiet down. Because growing up as a kid, my family life was kind of a mess, and school was a big mess, and there was lots of messes around in my life. Like, it was really messy. But I would walk on a tennis court and give myself permission to not think about all that. I mean, that's really all it was. I just would walk on the court, and it would give me something else to do than think about how wrong the rest of life looked to me. And so I mistakenly, and then I would have this beautiful experience, right? Because anytime we do that, anytime we just show up for whatever it is we're doing, we inevitably have a beautiful experience, even if it's showing up to do something that's really uncomfortable or hard. And so I thought tennis, for a long time, I thought tennis gave me a beautiful feeling. Like, I blamed tennis for this experience I was having, as if, and if you think about it, if that was true, there would be a lot more people playing tennis, right? Like the courts, you could never get a court because everyone would be out there just getting this really good feeling, and then they'd go back to their life again. And I knew that there was something else going on, but I really couldn't put my finger on it. But what I did experience frequently enough, and then I experienced it in other places too, and started to connect and started to realize that the feeling was the same, is I experienced the lack of separation between me and the world, between me and the ball, between me and my opponent. Like when I was playing, and really just losing myself to play, those things, like the illusion of separation disappeared. Because it's an illusion. Separation between human beings, separation between actions and thoughts, separation. This may not make sense to people, but let me just try. I got a glimpse then that what I think of as me is an illusion. It's a whole made-up group of thoughts and ideas. Call it an ego. This ideas about me, that's not me. This idea of me being this form and this separate entity, going out and hitting tennis balls and chasing tennis balls and hitting them back with this other separate entity, like that. At my most fun, those things dissolved into each other, and it was a dance. I experienced it as a dance. And when I was in college, I was videotaped once, and I knew what it felt like to play, but I saw myself on videotape for the first time, and I'm gonna get choked up. And I actually I cried when I saw myself play because it looked as beautiful as it felt. Like it was a dance. Like when I saw it was a videotape from above. It was a coaching session at Michigan State University, and they were using this video of me playing against this other high-level tennis player as a means for coaching. But what I saw was the dance. For the first time, I saw it not as the dancer, but as a witness of the dance. And it was clearly that we were connected by something more than the fact that we were beating this tennis ball back and forth. And I think as people, as I've in my life begun to see more and more that there's no separation between what I think of as me and the rest of the world, the more I recognize that and just live in that truth, and the more that I've seen that it doesn't really matter what thoughts happen to show up in my head at any moment, because they're just showing up in that moment, and I don't need to treat them as anything special. Like they're like, I live in Vermont and the weather changes here a lot. I grew up in Michigan, the weather changes there a lot. It's like, you don't really want to count on the weather being like it is now, because in 15 minutes it's going to be different, right? That's just what happens. It changes. Well, once I saw that it doesn't really matter what thoughts I have in this moment, even if it's the moment that I'm playing a match, if I just have them and let them go. If I just have them and let them go. And there's not a letting go, it's not a physical letting go, it's just sort of accepting them, like not fighting them. Like any thought I have is perfectly okay. It's got to be. It's just weather. It might not even be what I would choose if I could manufacture the thoughts that show up in my head, but I don't get to do that, right? I just show up, and then things show up in my head. And that's the experience I have. And if I don't become too attached to any of that personal thinking, what happens is it just, that personal thinking becomes less interesting. And whatever I'm doing gets more of my presence. So my thinking gets less of my thinking. and I just become more present in whatever I'm doing. And we can still, this was something I learned later, is that athletes can perform at their highest level, even if right before they're in the act of acting, they're having really disturbed thinking. When they know that does not matter, that I am not my thinking. I'm before my thinking. Like, my thinking is after the fact. So I just love that, and I just love knowing that, and I love forgetting it occasionally and remembering it again, and I really enjoy seeing what happens when people discover that for themselves in all of life. Is that, like, there's no bad thinking. There's nothing to fight that shows up. Because when we stop wrestling with it, then it just comes and goes, right? We don't hang on to it. And then, and we just have more freedom to act in service to the moment we're in. Be that as a parent, be that as coach, and be that as the athlete. Right? And people say, oh, it's amazing anticipation, or it's as if, and it was. I mean, I remember playing, and it was as if I knew what the other person was going to do the moment they did. Right? Like, you become so present with whatever it is you're doing that your awareness goes way beyond your intellect. You can't know what to do intellectually when you're playing sport at that level. That's too slow, right? But that's too slow always. See, that's the thing. Like, that's not where life is happening. It's not happening in our intellect. It's happening. We're it. It's like we're life unfolding, and the more we engage with that as kind of the true nature of how this all works, the less we have on everything we do. The less we have meaning, the less attention we're paying to the results, the less concern we have about how well we're going to do, how well the other person's doing, what their ranking is, whether we're supposed to win, whether we're supposed to lose, how much money is on this. Like, when you see that all of that stuff is just temporary noise, it's like the old radios where there's a dial and you have to turn it, and you're trying to get to the signal, and it's like, it's around 106, and you're moving the dial, and it's like really crackly, and then you can hear the music a little bit, and then you hear it a little better, and then you hear it a little bit, and then you hear it really well, and you keep going because you want to find the perfect signal, right? And then you keep going, and it starts to get crackly again, and you start to lose the signal, so you go back again, and you're trying to find that signal. Well, like, that signal to noise ratio, when we start to care less about the noise in our heads, like the personal thinking, we still have it. It's just not as interesting. And so we automatically kind of dial into the signal. And the signal, that's where the money is. Like, that's where the juice is. That signal is the intelligence of life that we are and that we're connected to, flowing through us like it always is, but us being like conscious of it, maybe. I'm not even sure that's the right word. Us being in it in a way that allows our actions to be guided not by anything personal. And in sport, when that happens, I mean, I went to college. My freshman year was Magic Johnson's last year at Michigan State University. Magic Johnson, the basketball player, and I've seen a lot of athletes who love playing. And I don't know if I've ever seen anyone who loves playing as much as he did. Like, he had a smile on his face every moment he was on the court. And he just played from that space. Anyway, I talked longer than I intended to. That's what's on my mind.
I'm so happy you did. It's beautiful, Andy. It's a different conversation, which is incredibly powerful. And you said knowing. You said it's really lovely to know this. And I think for me, that's that's probably where I'd like to steer the conversation now is, how do we help people to know this, like deeply, profoundly realize this for themselves? And let's open it up to what people are hearing and what else it is that people would like us to talk about specifically.
This is Barbara again. Can you hear me?
Yes, Barb, you're on.
If you've been watching the Boston Red Sox, you see Mookie Betts. He's always got a smile on his face, Andy, and he loves the game of baseball. You can just tell people that have joy in the moment are going to do well. And I think I teach exercise classes, and as I'm getting older, sometimes I lose track of where I am in teaching the class, but my body, because I know that my muscle memory is there, that there's a natural intelligence in my body. And so that when I can rely on that and forget about my thinking, whatever I'm thinking, let go of that personal thought, the exercises happen. And it's an amazing thing to know that our innate mental health, we have also an innate physical health, that our body knows how to digest and do everything else that it does almost on automatic pilot. So it's like trusting that your body will respond in the moment when you're having fun, enjoying yourself, and not thinking, not getting distracted.
That's lovely, Barbara. That's beautiful. I love that. What I heard in that is that trust in the body. The body, there is this intelligence within it, isn't there? It just does real well. Like, we don't have to worry about waking up and knowing how to walk to the bathroom.
Right.
It just doesn't.
Train as coaches, people know the skills, and they have to know that their body's going to respond. They don't get in the way.
Yeah.
Or if their thinking doesn't get in the way.
That's lovely. Thank you.
The biggest question that I have is, how do you really motivate people to get this understanding? I know it's by example and how you are with them in relationship. But so many people, like in track and field, get up to the line and they're ready to go and they're distracted. And as soon as they're distracted, they start thinking about something else and they'll lose the race. But if you can just get up at that starting line and have all this confidence and know that you don't have to think about it, you're just going to enjoy being in the moment, as you said, Annie, and just doing, playing the tennis, loving the ball, being one with it, being a part of the track, that we're all this connected energy. Then you just trust in that. So I guess, how do we motivate others to do that? And motivate you about the coaching, how your coaching has changed? How do you see that as having changed in your coaching?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, for me, the how to help people see, it's easier than I thought it used to be, because I used to think it was a thing I needed to sort of help them see, like trigonometry, or like a subject, like a thing that I had to somehow introduce. It was on me to introduce this thing, and then this concept and idea, and I think it's so much simpler than that now, the way I see it. And I don't have a direct. I mean, here's the beauty of this, and the good news and bad news, as George would say. George Francie is always about the good news and the bad news, right? But the bad news is I don't have an answer for how do you do that. And the good news is you do it the same way that you're asking, that you're kind of inviting them to be. Meaning, if I'm with someone like I'm with you all right now. Like my agenda, kind of in my mind, my agenda is not to appear smart. Thank God, because I'd be in trouble. My agenda is not to impress. My agenda, I don't have an, like, it's not to teach people about this understanding even. Sort of my agenda is, I mean, it was all those things in my head at different times before this. You know, you start thinking about stuff and like, what am I going to do? But then my agenda, it occurred to me, was that I need to sort of sit with you all and listen and then say what occurs to me from as impersonal a place as I can find. Right? Like, because it's from there I have a better idea about what to say, a better notion. It's like I'm more informed by a deeper perspective than I would if I intellectually had 5 things I wanted to make sure everybody left with. Because I could do that. You know, here's the 5 things you need to know about what we're talking about, and it would seem really clear, and people would pick up those 5 things, but not what we're talking about is like we're talking about like what's way upstream from those 5 things, like the source of those 5 things, the source of the capacity for us to even have 5 things to talk about. That's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about this infinite creative potential that takes form in human beings via our thinking and via our actions, right? It's form. It's the formless energy of life taking form. Now, anything that helps people see that that's all that's happening all the time in life, the extent to which they see that's true, in my experience, causes tremendous relief. Right? It causes this. It's like going to Vegas and knowing that if you lose your money, they're just going to give you more. Right? Because then you're like, come on, 7s. And, you know, if you don't get them, you're having fun rolling 7s. It doesn't matter. They're going to give you more money. It's like it takes the heat off. It takes all the pressure off when you realize that what you thought the game of life looked like, what winning looks like, isn't what I thought it was. I mean, it's a beautiful question, Barb, and I feel like you've done. I've known Barbara for, I don't know, 28 years or something now, Barb. And Barbara is the one who introduced the principles to me one day. Bless her heart, a long time ago. She introduced this understanding to me. And Barb, I feel like you've known how to do this your whole life, and you do it. In my experience, it comes through love. You know, you just have such admiration and appreciation for human beings and the body and movement and sports and teamwork and community and family. Like that's like when I think of you, Barbara Jorden, I think of those. Like I get really choked up. I think that's what you are. And so how you help people see this is in whatever occurs to you to say from that place helps people see it. And whatever you choose not to say helps people see it. And the more you think about what's the right thing to be doing to help people see it, probably the more distracted you'll get from knowing in that moment what to do. I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but I mean, I had.
Thank you so much. I love hearing you say. That was great. I love you too.
I love you so much.
Have you and Alyssa in my class. That was fantastic. Good journey.
Yeah, it was beautiful. But the biggest gift, one of the biggest gifts I've ever, in my entire life, that was one of the biggest gifts I've ever received, was being in your class for 40 minutes.
That's lovely. Wow, this is really special, guys. I guess what came to me is in terms of how's my coaching changed. And it just echoes really what Andy has just been talking about. But even though I would have been very player-centered in my coaching, somehow I would still have been the expert in the relationship. And I would have had knowledge and experience, and I would have, and years of it. And I would have been, if you like, coming from a place of all of that and using all of that. And that would have been very there. At the same time, I would have been hearing what my athletes had to say and helping them and collaborating with them. Nowadays, I am in relationship with athletes as one. There is no expert. There is knowledge, I think, about all the ideas I have of what I think I know. And I realize that to be an illusion. I realize that to be whatever I'm thinking about in that moment. I'm kind of creating it. And so I don't give any importance to that anymore. Like, it doesn't seem, not that I don't do it, I'm not doing it deliberately. It seems that it's not relevant. I am showing up, I suppose, now in a much higher state of connection with the other person in front of me or people in front of me. And just in that connection, Barb, it seems to be, impactful in a way which I never had before as a coach. I didn't have that before. There was never that feeling of connection to this incredible creative potential. Never. I wasn't even aware of it. Now we can see what's possible and we can be explorers of life together. Whereas my role before, I didn't see that at all. So working with a group of people, even with young people in a classroom, there is still a oneness. There is, and I'm not saying there's still a oneness. Of course, you're the coach, and you've got all of these young people, and you can't have them jumping about all the place. There needs some rules of engagement here, right? But even in that environment, we're still connecting as one, and the kids respond in a very, very different way to the way in which they would have responded before, which would have been probably fear-based, I've got to be quiet, or I've got to listen, and you wouldn't have that level of engagement that I now experience as a coach with athletes. And I think it is, like Andy says, it's the way you show up and your connection to truth. People can kind of hear it, they see it, they feel it much more than they ever felt before. And that seems to do, as I think George says this, that seems to do the heavy lifting. Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't want to make it another outcome.
No.
We don't want to make out what we're trying to share. Also, we don't need to have anything on that. Like, it's like looking at a rainbow. Like, you don't need to have anything on it. It's just it's just amazing. So you have appreciation, and then whatever shows up in that appreciation, and that's it. And that rubs off in whatever way. It just kind of rubs off. I don't know what other word to have it. That's enough.
Yeah, I just want to thank both of you for that. Was wonderful. One of the things that I've seen lately, and you confirmed it there, is when you get out of the way, when you stop being a coach, when you stop using psychology, when you take away all your learning and just bring no agenda into the situation, just bring yourself and another human being into the situation and hold that space for anything. It's a much more powerful situation. And I've just learned that recently, and You just described it beautifully. But the other thing you described is having fun. And one of the things I would say when I'm playing golf or squash, that whereas I don't put much on the winning, I don't have that fun and that dance. But now I'm really looking forward to playing squash tomorrow night, golf on Sunday, to bring that. Thank you. Really.
Oh, welcome. You're welcome.
Everybody that has showed up on the call today, and really, truly appreciate also you listening in. In the middle of the call there, you heard from a beautiful lady, Barbara Jorden, and at the end there, you were hearing from Declan Stout. And so if you'd like to get hold of Andy Winter, you can do so on winter.andy@gmail.com, or you can check out his website, which is www.centreforinsightandchange.com. And if you'd like to get hold of myself, just drop me a line on denise.holland@class-performance.com. So that just leaves me to say thank you so much for listening in, and I look forward to learning and sharing with you again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.